There's a train a-comin'. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board.
The federal election campaign is going on right now, as we know, and we're hearing a lot these days about the middle class from all parties. And I can understand why, because as was prophesied a long time ago, in a capitalist system like the one that we find ourselves living in, if checks and balances are not kept clearly and maintained, the rich would get richer and the poor would get poorer. So there's an addendum to that famous saying, which I find that a lot of people are forgetting, and that is that while the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer, the middle class will slowly but surely get squeezed and eventually would be diminished. A very few, a small minority, would actually be able to make it up into the higher echelons of society and become part of the 1%, the very rich. However, at the same time, many of the middle class would find themselves slipping down to become the working poor. And this is the middle class who once were well off and comfortable without having to strive too hard. But today, what do we find, even here in Nova Scotia? Many of those middle class people, they can't exist on one job anymore. They're having to find 2, 3 jobs. And oftentimes, sadly, they are minimum wage jobs. They're not even good jobs with a pension. And that to me is a sign that what has been prophesied is actually happening. So we don't have to look too far to see signs of that. Right across North America, in the UK, and in fact many major Western civilizations, this is happening. Globalization is one of the causes of this phenomenon, and as I've heard it described by Nobel Peace Prize winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, he describes globalization as capitalism on steroids. Mm-hmm. And he warns that globalization, if left unfettered, will create more poverty for many countries, not less, as economists once thought. And in fact, Stiglitz says it already has, and it already is. So, how do we improve life for the people of Nova Scotia, this small little peninsula on the east coast of Canada? Well, while we certainly can't forget the middle class and the struggle of the middle or working class, we also cannot forget the people already living in poverty, or about the ongoing struggle for equality, sexual, gender-based, racial, and for persons living with various kinds of disabilities, including mental illness. After all, shouldn't we as New Democrats, and shouldn't we as human beings, care about the issue of equality, fairness, and justice for all, as we have traditionally? So I feel very lucky to be part of the so-called real middle class at this point in my life anyway, because who knows, as women get older and their lives change, many of them slip down to become the working poor, and in fact the very poor. I own my own home at this time, and I should have a small pension if I ever retire, which, like many others these days, seems more and more unlikely, because I probably won't be able to afford to, but that's okay, because as an artist, I didn't plan on retiring anyway. We don't have very many protections as artists. We don't get unemployment insurance or employment insurance here in Canada. We barely have pensions to live on, and most of us as artists have to live and work until our 80s, until we drop. So, as an MLA for 2 consecutive terms, in my writing I know that many people cannot come close to having a comfortable existence these days, because they're either living in poverty already or they are Nova Scotia's working poor. So I'm sure that many of you here today actually know people in your community who cannot even afford to buy healthy food, and sometimes they and their families go hungry just so they can pay the rent. That's why I believe in food security. And I believe in good, locally grown, healthy food, and that we need to be able to get this food into our hospitals, our various institutions, and into the schools for our children, for the children who are coming to school oftentimes hungry. So that's why, unfortunately, Many people in Nova Scotia today, and around Canada really, have to rely on food banks, which, although they're doing a great service, should not, in my estimation, even have to exist in this day and age. Why can't our government make sure that people and their children do not go hungry? If poor countries like Cuba, for instance, can give children 2 meals a day at school, why can't we? I suggest that the province itself needs to implement a breakfast and lunch program for children, all children attending public schools in Nova Scotia. Let's give our children a chance to start out on the right foot. Let's give them the boost that they need to be healthy, no matter what their economic situation is at home. And that's something that I would definitely advocate for as leader of the NDP. Now, as our federal NDP counterpart is promising, better health care would definitely help all Canadians. $15 a day child care will help women get back into the workforce, and even a $15 an hour minimum wage will help the working class, as well as post-secondary students. And it may also help those who are soon to be pushed off welfare and into the workforce, whether they like it or not, under potential changes to Nova Scotia's ESIA program. However, it will not help the poorest of the poor who live in a shelter, those who can't find a job, affordable housing, those who simply can't work because they have serious health issues or are disabled. And it will do little to strengthen the bottom rung of our social safety net, our provincial income assistance programs. Under the previous NDP government, we did introduce 2 major initiatives, an affordable housing strategy and a mental health strategy. However, the current Liberal government seems to have dropped both like hot potatoes, just as they have almost everything that the NDP has touched or introduced. And they've reversed much of our legislation as well, including that designed to help labor with collective bargaining and first contracts for those wishing to unionize. Shame. Yes, Ida. Instead of developing a proper affordable housing program and creating a better system of living for people with mental illness or our seniors, this government seems to have taken a page out of the George Bush Republican Handbook. Ever since coming into power, they've been focused on cutting and gutting programs that are in place to help those in need, while at the same time they're privatizing everything they can get their hands on. And trust me, folks, they're going to keep doing that. I can see the future, and it is not pretty under this Liberal government that we currently have. Unions are in trouble. They want to bash unions and break them up, and they want to privatize everything, including home care. So I'm extremely concerned about the future of the province if this government continues to stay in power. They've lost no time in cutting some organizations completely. As I said earlier, they've now cut the funding for the hearing impaired, for the lobby group for the hearing impaired, so now they're not going to be able to exist. And there are many other organizations, NGOs like this, that are now going to be struggling and probably will have to just give up and close up their offices. They also gutted and closed up an organization that was doing very well here in Nova Scotia, which was our highly successful agency, the Film and Creative Industries Nova Scotia Agency, which was specifically designed to help our many arts organizations, as well as our screen industry, grow and flourish. And it had been doing a successful job doing that and building that sector, from one which brought in $6 million to Nova Scotia's economy, to one that last year brought in $150 million. Well, this year, thanks to the now infamous fiasco of gutting our one major incentive for growth, the film tax credit, we'll be lucky if Nova Scotia attracts even half of the investment that we already did last year. Shame, as far as I'm concerned, shame. And the effects of that are now becoming clear as more and more businesses that are associated with the creative economy are closing up and moving to Ontario and further west. Many of the artists are being affected as well. Some of them, even if they had a few days on a film or a television here or there, it would be enough for them to then go and do a really nice theater gig, because theater, as we know, doesn't pay very well. So we need a balance of all of the different creative economy, the different mediums and venues out there for us to be successful in this province. The arts and culture and heritage are all very important parts of our creative economy here in Nova Scotia, and we need to support them all as far as I'm concerned. This will not only help our many professional artists and talented artisans, but it will also, if done with imagination and vision, I believe it will also help our tourism industry. And as I said earlier before I started my speech, that is, I think, also a very, very important aspect of Nova Scotia, which is falling behind. By the way, the government did cut and gut the tourism department, so it's gone now. So I don't know what they're thinking there, because we need to increase our tourism, not just let it go by the wayside. I also believe in supporting a knowledge-based economy. They call it the knowledge-based economy of the 21st century, which includes IT and post-secondary education. And to this end, I support the academics who say that academic freedom has been compromised in this province by recent legislation introduced by the current Liberal government. I also support the students' movement who've been asking that student loans be turned into grants. Why should our students come out of university drowning in debt? How does that help strengthen our economy or encourage young people to stay in this province when many of them will head out west to get higher paying jobs to pay off their debt? I've heard this over and over again. They come out of school drowning in debt. They go, well, I'm going to have to go out west. How else am I going to pay it off? Well, that's not what we want. We want to keep them here. Put down roots. Let's give them an opportunity to feel that they are appreciated here, they are valued, that we want their young, bright minds, and we want them to stay here in Nova Scotia. I also say that we need to invest in the green economy and in green jobs. Recent studies show that there are now more jobs associated with the green economy in the tar sands region in Alberta than there are jobs related to fossil fuels. We're perfectly situated here in Nova Scotia to create jobs that harness the wind, the waves, and solar energy, the sun, and it will help us do our part to save our planet from the dangers and destruction being brought about by global warming. And I cannot tell you how much I feel that there needs to be more discussion in our province and in our party about addressing and mitigating climate change. Because when every major recognized and respected climate expert tells us that we all need to make serious changes to the way we live and do business around the world, I'd say, to borrow from the Ivany report, it's now or never. Now or never. When it comes to helping Nova Scotians to live a better life, I support an increase in income assistance. I support the development of a national pharmacare program that could help many people get the drugs that they need. I also support dental coverage for all ages, not just for children. Right now we have it up to age 14, and our NDP government was going to introduce it to keep extending it up to age 17, which didn't happen because this new Liberal government threw that into the dustbin. But I support dental care for all ages, including our seniors, because I feel that that is part of our health care. Mm-hmm. That is definitely part of your health. If you have rotting teeth and bad need root canals, this is going to really be expensive, and many people can't afford it. So I think that we need to help people with their dental coverage. And I believe that oral hygiene and oral health should be accepted as part of the overall health plan. In my 6 years as MLA, I've seen just how badly we need a plan like this to help people with dental assistance, especially our seniors, because right now I believe the system is failing them. Finally, I'm also concerned about the kind of world we are leaving for our grandchildren. I care deeply about all children, and I believe that our province needs to create a specific plan to address and mitigate climate change. And I can assure you that this is going to be one of the biggest global issues in our lifetime. So let's get on top of it now instead of waiting for others. I support David Suzuki's Blue Dot movement, which is asking governments to introduce legislation to acknowledge that clean air, water, and soil are a human right. And this is a bill that I would very much like to introduce in Nova Scotia. As leader of the NSNDP, I can guarantee that I would be prepared to make specific commitments to address and mitigate climate change in Nova Scotia based on the resolutions that come out of the Paris Climate Change Summit later this year. And I would also commit to guaranteeing that I would want to work towards eradicating poverty in this province. I would also want to prepare to rebuild and rejuvenate the creative economy, which includes all of the arts as well as our screen sector. I'd like to put an emphasis on women and children, which are often sadly the face of poverty in our province and around the world. And I can guarantee that I'm prepared to stand for peace in a world gone crazy with hatred, anger, and war. Finally, I can guarantee that as leader, I would be ready, willing, and able to commit my life to our party, to fight for what we believe in, and commit my life to the people of Nova Scotia to work for the things that will strengthen our province as well, without compromising the NDP's cherished core social democratic values, which I believe are vital for building a better world. And that's why my campaign, Lenore for Leader, is not just a campaign. We're building a movement. Thank you.